All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Georgia basketball fans, if there are any, had to experience that last night in TBA. Also here, over there in Oak Ridge, my good friend, fellow University of Tennessee alumni, Stats by Will Warren. Will, good evening, sir. How are you?
I am good. So, to be honest, I think in my time on Twitter, and I've been on Twitter for a long time, I have spotted like 2 Georgia basketball fans that are like actual Georgia basketball fans, not like, oh, they play a sport at Georgia, so I am required to support it. It's not like Tennessee basketball, where I think there are like Tennessee basketball dominant fans. I have yet to truly meet like a Georgia basketball obsessive for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're still ways away, even though the broadcast team last night would not have you believe so. Well, I'm not that guy, but I was jotting down notes. I'm like, they're really trying hard to make it seem like this is moving in the right direction for Georgia. And it's like, what are we watching here? It's like Zakai Ziegler's fifth steal. This is not a real game. What are we talking about?
Do you want an incredible stat that's not the stat of the day?
Yes.
So versus the KenPom preseason ratings now, how many SEC teams are overachieving their preseason rating?
2.
2. Alabama and Tennessee.
Yeah.
Out of 14. That is not good. Georgia, who got demolished last night, is actually 3rd, because they are basically achieving 2 what the preseason ranking was.
I like that. Well, the FCC, well, that also, the SEC.
It honestly should be the FCC, because people should be calling about some of these games and asking them to be taken off TV.
I agree, Will. So we have a lot to get to today. Will is going to see, hopefully, the Lady Vols take care of business against UConn tonight. This should be a fun matchup for the Lady Vols and Kelly Harper's bunch. So, Will, to start things off, Florida Atlantic is a top 25 team now in America. What makes the Owls fun?
So it's actually very well timed. I've got a post coming out tomorrow, aka when this drops, about teams worth bandwagoning. Like even if you got a fan, even if you're like me and you're a Tennessee writer, it helps to have like a second team. I've noticed this especially in the college football space, where like there's a Patrick Mayhorn, who's a brilliant writer. Grew up an Ohio State fan who's just like, I can't do it anymore. And so he moved to Utah to cover Utah State, because it's just like you have your high major team, your big boy, and then you've got like, oh, I want to watch FAU to keep myself sane. They're a rare mid-major whose offense and defense are more or less equally good. Very good deep shooting team, very good interior defense. I think they're 12th in 2-point percentage allowed. Very strong on the defensive boards. They remind me a lot of maybe like a slower version, but equally exciting, of last year's Murray State team. So they're going to win a whole bunch of games. They're going to be in what I would declare to be relative obscurity. It's not like they're on ESPN Main a lot. Like all the FAU games I've watched, unfortunately, this year have been ESPN Plus productions, which is not to say that those are inherently bad. But like the average fan is not going to be able to watch FAU on a normal night unless they're paying extra for ESPN Plus.
But it's almost that time of year, because it's like the only way to watch Tennessee baseball games. If you're not there, is just
in the Tennessee. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but the Tennessee baseball ESPN Plus productions are god awful.
I'll remain silent here.
Sorry to whoever does that, and it's not your fault. It is not your fault that Tennessee only puts up like one camera in the stadium for those. Not at all that person's fault. But anyway, so the interesting thing to me, and challenge to anybody, take a look at FAU's resume, which so Torvik has this thing that's basically called resume, where it's averages KPI and the ESPN strength record, which are a couple of metrics the committee uses. Basically tells you FAU's got the 21st best resume in America. So if you look at that and you don't have a name attached to it, you would think this is a team headed for a 5 or a 6 seed. And we'd be talking about them like we used to talk about Butler. But they've got that resume, and they sit as a 9 seed. And I think the last 9 seed on the bracket matrix. Why is that?
I don't know.
Because I think the metrics, I mean, they're not great in comparison, but it's certainly a lot more charitable than it is for like College of Charleston or somebody. And I love College of Charleston, but I don't know. I have a hard time figuring out why New Mexico, for example, is higher rated on Bracket Matrix, who I like, than FAU. Or, like why we're
Pitino bump.
The Pitino bump. Or why Wisconsin shares a seed line with them, which is ridiculous. So I don't know. I'd like to see these guys get some more respect nationally. I think they're earning it. And they are going to be the very rare post-Memphis CUSA team. That is, I think, probably pretty close to an at-large lock. Assuming they don't drop a really bad game the rest of the way. So let's say FAU, I'm just checking the Torvik page right now. FAU is projected to finish 28-3, 18-2 in conference. I think if they do that, they're in no matter what happens in the Conference USA tournament. And that would be awesome. I want to see a team from what's been a single bid league get legit 9-8 seed or higher respect. I think it's overdue.
Yes, but they're fun. And if you're an FSU fan and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, just jump on the FAU thing this year.
If you're a fan of any state of Florida team that's not Florida, actually, because I think Florida's trending upwards, you could do a lot worse than jumping on board with FAU. Or Miami, I guess. You can be a Miami fan this year. They're all right.
For sure. Will, the Emoni Bates game that was just one of the more fun, obscure ESPN The Ocho games that no one's watching, and then everyone's suddenly watching because it's like, oh my God, what is Bates doing? What is Bates doing? And he was just cooking and cooking and cooking. And it was one of those games where I was tracking, oh, they're going to lose this game. Some of the heat check pull-ups where I'm like, this is not going to end with an Eastern Michigan dub over Toledo. And the Toledo coach of the game was like, it's kind of hard to play against a guy who's playing peak Kevin Durant or something like that with just his shots and what he was able to do and create for himself, where he had just an unbelievable amount of points in a row just by him. But what did you make of that game, Will? And has he evolved a lot as a prospect for you since we last really saw him at Memphis?
I don't know about evolving fully as a prospect. I think we're seeing the promise a little bit. I've yet to purely see what would make him great at the next level, because it's a feel-good story, right? And I think he's going to be probably working his way back into the second round. But can I read his last 4 games for you in order?
Yes, please.
3 points, 24 points, 7 points, 43 points. And this is, again, not in a good league. Sorry to say.
And not on a good team. They're 4-16?
4-16. And it's really funny watch them, because it is the most disorganized and bad defense I have put time down watching, except when they play good teams. They're all right, let's try. Let's give it a shot. Whenever they're playing good competition, they actually put in some effort. When they're playing whenever they're playing the Northern Illinois and Western Michigans of the world, could not care less about stopping a drive to the basket. So they're entertaining in that way. But I mean, I think this is a net positive for him. I still, maybe it wouldn't have worked out, but I wish he would have gone, because the sort of second in line rumor was Seton Hall, and I really wish he had gone there. I don't know if it would have worked as well, and I don't know if he would have been as comfortable as he is basically being at home. But it's on a better team. He would have gotten more publicity. And frankly, I think he would have been asked to try a lot harder than he is on this, going nowhere EMU team. But again, it's good to see him, making good on the high school promise a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 29 straight points is just bonkers. One of the best halves of basketball you'll ever see. And he's just fun. He's a fun player to watch. He shoots a lot of threes. He's really good at getting to the rim. I think it's just weird because it's just the T-Rex arms, right? That's one of the first things you see is you're just if this dude had a longer wingspan, there's no question he is one of the most 5 interesting prospects going into the draft next year. But because of the wingspan, it's weird.
And it's nice that at EMU he's being allowed to play what he should have been able to play at Memphis. For reasons I will never understand, Penny tried to play him at the 3, which is extremely not his position at 6'10". And couldn't get the appropriate spacing, wasn't able to really create as a 3. And so they're playing him more as like a 4 and sometimes 5 at EMU. And that's just much more his strengths.
For sure. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way, but he is fun. And there needs to be a Twitter account now that is just, what is Bates doing right now? That should just be the tweet, and we just see it on the time like, oh, he's cooking. All right, everyone tap into CBS Sports Plus, HQ, Zing, Zang, Zung, whatever channel they're on, because it's really hard to watch.
They're on the sites that give you a virus, like the ones that... Like ATD, I'm going through my catalog here mentally. Shout out to all of my former or illegal streamers circa like 2011 out there. First Row Sports, ATDHE, RIP to what's now Twitch, but was once upon a time Justin.tv.
Oh, was that what Twitch was?
Yes, because I remember watching truly incredible, and this is, I think, is pre-ESPN Plus, the NCAA men's hockey final on Justin TV in 2010.
That is some serious Michigan love. I know why you were watching that, Will Warren. Like, the man loves his Michigan ice sports. You mentioned his team a little bit ago, Will, but it looks like New Mexico has a real possibility with Richard Pitino of getting the Lobos into the NCAA tournament. Is it feeling inching closer and closer to a lock that they're a tournament team for you?
I think they're they should be a lock. I don't know if they will be. Objective, but I mean, like, if you look at them on paper, this is a team trending towards like a 7 seed, which is awesome. I mean, the main thing for me to watch is like, can they continue to elevate their seeding a little bit? Like, yeah, they're not undefeated anymore, but this is a very good Mountain West. I mean, the Mountain West really could get 5 teams in, which is crazy.
Who are the 5?
San Diego State, Boise State, Nevada, New Mexico, and I think the team that's going to be squarely on the cut line is Utah State. That's the swing piece. If Utah State can improve just a hair, and I think it's possible, they're going to be the 5th. And
if they win the tournament, though, does that screw somebody?
No, I think Nevada might get screwed, but I think they're going to be okay no matter what. The real swing piece is, what if Utah State improves to like, a 10 seed or whatever, and then our man Tim Miles comes through at San Jose State and makes it 6 teams, or UNLV, I guess, but that's not as exciting. San Jose State doing it would be fun.
I would love the idea that Tim Miles is just like, every day, he's like, Nebraska. Nebraska, you thought it was me. You thought it was a me problem. It may have just been, there's something about Nebraska basketball that they're not allowed to be good. Like, that just might be the case. They're just not allowed.
Yeah. But no, New Mexico is really fun. I like watching them a lot. I'm affectionate towards the Mountain West in general because it is... I mean, in terms of like conferences that actually matter in college basketball, like not for, just like one weekend in March, they really could be, and maybe the Pac-12 a little bit, though I don't know how it's going to fare in the post-UCLA USC era, pretty much the only conference left that really retains its same cultural identity it had 20 years ago. Very rare in college sports. I mean, like, there's very little that has changed over the years for those teams, and I love that. And the thing that's changed the least is like New Mexico's home court advantage, still awesome when they play a good opponent. Like, I loved watching them beat Boise State in overtime last week. Great home atmosphere. But that exists at a lot of places. Like Utah State has an amazing one. Boise State's is underrated. Wyoming's last year was amazing. And so you get a lot of that in that league. But I wish they took more threes, because they make a lot of them. So anytime I see like a team that has a good percentage, like, you should just take more threes. Try it. What could go wrong? But they are really fun. They get to the free throw line a lot. They dunk it a lot too. They have this guy Morris Udeze who has 40 dunks alone. And best part about this for men of a certain age, Jamal Mashburn Jr. On the team, really good. Probably their best offensive player, scoring 19 a game. I don't know, man. I really like this team. I want to see them go far. I know not to bet on a Mountain West team doing anything in March, but I mean, we got a long way until March, so I plan on enjoying them while they're with us.
For sure. But we shall see, like you said. But positive for the Lobos. As their football.
Cannot believe how positive I feel towards like Pitino coach teams these days. Because I did not enjoy the Richard Pitino Minnesota experience. But like Iona is very fun, and now this New Mexico team is awesome.
We don't call him Pitino, Will Warren for nothing.
They don't call me Mr. 17 Seconds for no reason.
Will, Xavier,
Yes.
they beat UConn. UConn falls to 16-6. I think I don't remember how many wins exactly, but I think Xavier only has 4 losses as of this recording. What seed is Xavier looking at? Because I feel like they're the forgotten team right now in the Big East that is just piling up the wins and just playing really good basketball. And it's like, I think it's going to come tournament time when they're like, oh, Xavier is really good. And, there's going to be a lot of people in their brackets who are going to just be like, ooh, Elite Eight, Xavier? Like that,
Xavier
that's going to happen. They're going to be a favorite.
It's a very attractive name to see in a bracket.
Yes,
it's like when you see Butler or teams like that where you're like, oh, yeah, they made the Elite Eight when I was 15. I want to pick them to go far.
That's 100% accurate.
Yes. No, I mean, like, they're really good. They're a lot better than I thought they would be. And I mean, I didn't think they would be bad by any means, but I think we were kind of all settled into expectation for them preseason that they were going to be like, I don't know, a 6 to 8 seed, somewhere in there. Like, they'd be good, not really going to threaten for the Big East title, but they're going to be solid and tough to beat. But they're above what I think anybody could have reasonably guessed. They're going to have a legit shot at a 3 seed. If they won out somehow, which I don't think is possible in their conference, because they've still got to go at Marquette, at Providence, at Creighton. I mean, they could get up to a 2, but probably a 4 seed feels about right. And you look at this team and you look at, they kind of had to fix up some of it on the fly. They don't have a very deep bench. They got about 7 guys who constitute the rotation on most nights. But like Souley, Boum, great story, really good player. Jack Nunge has really improved. Zach Fremantle is very fun to watch. I mean, if you are in need of a team to bandwagon and you don't want to pick like a mid-major, these really could be your guys because number 3 in three-point percentage, number 4 offense. They don't play good defense, which makes all of their games very exciting no matter who they're playing. This is a team that beat Creighton, beat Marquette, lost to DePaul, nearly lost to Georgetown, and then turned around and beat UConn. So any given night, you could get quite the result. But we're going to enter a period of time here where Sean Miller is going to get a little Coach of the Year buzz. And I wouldn't declare it wrong. I'd put a few guys ahead of him, but he should get like some votes. Like he's done a good job with a roster that really underperformed last year. And it feels like Xavier is Xavier again.
Do you think Field of 68 might name him their Coach of the Year?
Well, they love the Miller brothers, so I think that's kind of a lock. Though they really have bought into the Charleston hype, so I think Pat Kelsey is going to be the front runner for their little Coach of the Year award. So, but any Miller brother that wins a game, and they're kind of they got all the eggs in that basket now that it's pretty clear Frank Martin is actually bad. So they can't really do his thing anymore.
What is UMass's record this season?
I honestly have not followed them, but I saw there's a thread out there that I'll have to find where they accumulated like 15 press conferences worth of quotes where he's angry at how the team is being treated on Twitter, which is just like an amazing thing for you to do in year 1.
That is some strong South Carolina vibes with Shane Beamer always on Twitter, angry at what folks are saying about the OC hires and all this and that.
Frank, my brother, you've got to get offline.
It's just get offline, folks, especially when your coach is like, we have to be online for our jobs and stuff. You don't have to ever be online. Like, that is a gift. You never have to be online. It's a waste of time. Stay off twitter.com if you can. You have a job that allows you to do so. Will, our favorite segment. Duke is NIT bound. What say you?
No, they're not. They'll be like a 7 seed, which is going to be like shocking for people to see who haven't like really closely followed college hoops this year because I don't remember off the top of my head, but they're at least preseason top 8, right?
Oh yeah, no, they're
they might
like
have been
preseason top 4. Yeah.
Okay. But no, I think they're going to get in. It's clearly not been the team they thought they would have, and I think some of it is out of Shire's control. Like, I don't think he could have known that Derek Whitehead would have barely played, or that you would have. I'm not sure how many possessions, if any, where they've been able to get Filipowski, Lively, and Whitehead all on the court at the same time. I mean, and that was sort of like the big 3 entering the preseason. So they're a really interesting team to me, where it's like if they ever got healthy, they could be like, you would not want them in your bracket because of the talent. I mean, on paper, that is a top 5 talent team. It's the same, or well, slightly different with Kentucky. But you look at these guys and it's like, man, they should be better than they are. But also, okay, so I looked it up. 93 possessions they've had together all season, the 3 freshmen, which is 7% of their on-court time. So that kind of tells you a little bit of it. But it's like Jacob Grandison hasn't been available all the time. You've had a lot of, Jeremy Roach missed 4 games. You've had a lot of in and out, a lot of lineup instability. And I think that's why, 1, their defense has not been very good. 2, the offense cannot really find consistency. And I think 3, they've just also had some bad luck. Like they probably should have won the Clemson game that they lost. Like they were, frankly, a little unlucky against Virginia Tech as well. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm the sicko who can't quit on them, which is always possible. But with a team as talented as they are, and in an ACC as weak as this one, if they were to finish, we'll say 22-9, 13-7 in ACC play, that doesn't really feel outlandish, does it?
What would they have to finish to miss the tournament? Well, how many more losses would they have to have?
I think they would have to. You'd have to finish like 10-10 in the ACC. So they'd have to finish 5-6 basically. And so they're underdogs in 3: road Miami, road Virginia, road North Carolina. But there are a couple of real stinkers they could drop in there. Like, this doesn't sound like a stinker, but if you lose at home to a UNC team that's just kind of like,
Very possible, by the way.
Yeah, very possible. That's not a great loss. Could lose at Syracuse, which is, that's a huge bummer with this Syracuse. So my
walking
guess
out of that press conference yesterday.
I'm sorry.
Did you see Boeheim walking out of that press conference after the UNC loss?
No.
He was not happy.
I'm not surprised.
It's not going great up there in Q's country.
It's almost as if he should have retired 5 years ago. But anyway,
this is just getting worse. Every year, it's just getting worse.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm not ready to quit on Duke yet. I think. But these next 3 games are kind of the tell, right? So they're favorites, but they're small favorites. Road Georgia Tech, who's bad, and then 2 home games against Wake, who's a bubble-ish team, and then UNC, who's disappointing but still very talented. If they can get through that 3-0, that puts you at 8-4 in the ACC, and then I think you've really got to screw up in the final 8 games to somehow be back on the bubble.
You've got a stew going.
Yeah,
you've got a stew going. Has Tennessee found their best lineup? Will Warren?
I think so. And, we talked about it a lot in the preseason of, you were right. And I think a lot of people were right that, Barnes was going to start Plavsic for a long time, or as long as he could. Though I think, and it seems like they've kind of hinted at this in the media, this change, and for context, it's, Ziegler, Vescovy, Josiah Jordan-James, Julian Phillips, and then Olivier Kamwa, who shoots 3s at the 5. That was kind of the lineup we were all anticipating all year long, but I think James being injured and then Vescovy having his shoulder thing kind of threw that up in the air. So, it took a little longer than expected to get there, but in a way it reminds me of 2018-19 where it took Tennessee a while to get Yves Pons out of the lineup and then start Lamonte Turner again with Bowden coming off the bench. So that was kind of like your best lineup as you wound down that year. I think Tennessee's there again. And the interesting thing, and I think we're starting to see it a little bit covered, but it wasn't for a while, is how big of the swing piece Josiah Jordan-James is. Because, I think I would wager everybody has a basic understanding that Tennessee is significantly better when Josiah Jordan-James plays, right? Is he, the piece between Final Four and round of 64? Probably not, but he's a big piece. But the thing that matters most to me is the shot selection splits, because I think those actually will tell you what impact a player has when it's his lineups versus others. So when James is off the floor, Tennessee gets 37% of their shots from 3, 22% mid-range, 41% at the rim. When James is on the court, 48% of all shots from 3, 19% mid-range, 33% at the rim, while still being pretty efficient on 2s and obviously shooting a lot better from deep. And so, I think that's the key piece is Tennessee basically goes from what I would politely describe as a mid-table offense when Josiah cannot play to, hey, this is actually pretty good when he's on the court. And yeah, like, last, against Georgia, I almost forgot who they played because quick digression, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong or not. The way this SEC has developed, Tennessee and Alabama are playing like 7 games each against opponents where you immediately forget everything that happened as soon as the game ended. It's like playing Maryland in football 7 times.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. I hadn't considered it that way. I mean, it's one of those you just forget, like, even the hot, like, it was they were trying so hard to make it a game early where it's like they got up to the 4-0 run and you're like, oh, they're spunky. And it's like it was 17-14 at one point and you're like, oh, Tennessee's shooting well. Like, this was one of those nights where Tennessee was hitting threes where I was like, oh, Georgia's going to get stomped. Like, the defense is going to come around. The points that they were scoring, like, Marshall was held to, like, 0 in the first half. Like, he was just, the clamps were down and it was over. Ziegler was pesky, getting a bunch of steals, and we were playing our best lineup. I was just like, this is going to get ugly sooner rather than later. And I think that's just kind of with this iteration, I think that's where we're at, Will. It's like when they have these lineups against, like you said, a bunch of Marylands, it's just like the hammer is going to be dropped at some point, and then it's not fun. The one thing I will say I wrote down that I'll remember is, like, I don't like that Barnes is still doing these Euros and I do minutes. Like, he's still burning some time where there were some lineups where you cannot play that against good teams. Like, he was doing it against Georgia, but, like, man, there was some Tobe Awaka and I do minutes, and I was like, no.
I honestly think after a certain point, once the game kind of became what it was, Tennessee seemed to pretty openly treat it like they were playing Alcorn State again.
Yeah,
and they were
trying stuff out.
They're just like, screw it, let's see what works. And honestly, I like that. I think that's pretty funny. To do that against an SEC team is genuinely hilarious. But yeah, I mean, you look at how they are and how versatile they can be, where it's essentially Euros is the only guy, and Idu has a little bit of this, where he's a good rim protector, but Barnes is right in that he could be an elite one day. Where
he's also terrified to shoot. That man touches the ball and he wants it out immediately, and that's when he gets into problems.
He needs to be more willing to take the 3 at the top of the key, frankly. Yes. Because that will open a lot of things up for him. But I don't mind playing Euros at center when there's an actual shooter at power forward. Like, I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm not really convinced that Euros and Kamwa can even play together very well. Like, I actually think that's an okay defensive lineup, but especially for bully ball. But I do not really like it offensively because Kamwa is not the most aggressive offensive player, I would say. And Euros is Euros. He's not really going to take a shot outside of 5 feet from the rim. So that kind of constricts what he can do. And Kamwa doesn't have a quick trigger, so it's kind of a little like playing 4-on-5. So, but if you put Plavsic out there at center and it's like James and Phillips are the other 2 forwards, totally fine. Let's see how that works. I think that's fine though. But it's really entertaining to watch this team do their thing, where there seems to be kind of, and you touched on this on a very good piece on your site yesterday, kind of an open war brewing between Tennessee media and Tennessee fans about how much they're willing to invest in this basketball team, which is, it's entertaining because, like, Tennessee doesn't score that many points, and it's not like that. It's not the most thrilling basketball you've ever seen, but it's like Virginia won a lot of games, and I think their fans are probably pretty happy.
And what I wrote about too is, like, it's not even like a Tennessee fan thing entirely. I think it's just where the sport falls in the sports calendar. Like you said, with playing 7 Marylands in a row, like when the non-conference slate is not good.
Let's go ahead and include Arkansas in that list of Marylands, by the way. What a TikTok program if I've ever seen one.
Well, theirs, I just feel bad because it's just injuries all over the place. They got destroyed with it.
You can't come into the year and have one shooter on the roster, Eric Musselman.
Yeah, that's true.
That's on you, brother.
But I will say, like,
more McDonald's.
Exactly. I don't know. I just think it's one of those where the calendar is part of it. I think because the sport markets itself around one time of year, I think it's only for the real sickos who are just like living and dying by like what's happening each and every night in college basketball. And I think it's also, if you ask the random fan when Tennessee plays every week, they wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, sometimes it's a Tuesday, sometimes it's a Wednesday or a Saturday, and like, well, what time are we on Saturday? I think it's just not as easy to follow for the casual fan or even just the Tennessee fan. I don't think it's anyone who's associating with like, oh, we're winning too much now in football and baseball, there's just not enough energy. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's just what you're going to see is come March or come tournament time, it's going to be just Tennessee takeover all over the place. Like, the fans will be packing it. And if like Tennessee's a 1 seed, it's going to be electric wherever they're playing. Like, they're going to show out. I just think we're at that point in the season where if you're looking for like, oh, let's go, we got to see, I'm so excited to see. It's like, well, they're not really playing anybody yet. We don't play Alabama until February. Like, it's just, what do you want them to do? What they're all just like, we're good. The first marquee home game with students that can actually attend. I mean, like, students could attend the Kentucky game, but school wasn't in session. Right.
And it's at that point, it's just like, if you live near Knoxville, you can go. And not everybody does. So with that in mind, I mean, like, the first game of the entire season that's against a good opponent when school is in session is Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think Saturday you're going to have a really good crowd. And so I think
so too.
It's kind of like last year, actually, where Tennessee had those marquee games against top 5 teams down the stretch. And all 3 games, the crowd was amazing.
Yes.
But it was because, like, the crowd wasn't very good earlier in the season because Tennessee wasn't playing anybody good. It is what it is. And I think you're right. It's where it falls in the calendar. I also think naturally people get more interested once the Super Bowl passes.
Yeah.
Because then in your mind, it's like, okay, football is officially over. Baseball hasn't started yet. Let's think about basketball for the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, football has no competition in the fall. Like, there's just no appointment viewing. It's just you get 6 home games a year if you're lucky, and that's it. It's there and gone. And Tennessee basketball, you have a lot of opportunities to see Tennessee basketball. And then baseball, it's just catching rays, man. That's the thing. It's nice to sit outside in the warmth for 2.5 to 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon. It's just different, a different vibe.
For sure. But I think, we'll see what this team does on Saturday. I think it's a pretty advantageous matchup for Tennessee. Texas is not bad by any stretch, but I think, since what happened in mid-December, their defense has been trending in a hard negative direction. While they've become really entertaining to watch, where every game of theirs seems to exist in like the 80s and 90s. Because they cannot stop anyone and they cannot be stopped. So I'm curious to see how Tennessee deals with that defensively. But I think offensively, it's going to be a game where they probably look good. It's going to look a lot better than last year's Tennessee-Texas game for somebody tuning in.
That was just... And it ended with Josiah Jordan-James missing the open 3, right?
Yeah, a truly, truly dire game to watch.
I remember I watched that game with my now wife and father at Roosters. I remember just like falling off the chair just with the miss. Like that was a brutal loss. I remember it well. A tradition unlike any other. Just pain when watching big time Tennessee sporting events. Will, your stat of the week here as we wrap up here tonight.
This one is also Tennessee based, but it's also SEC based too.
Okay.
So since December 1st, so essentially 2 months. Tennessee, obviously number 1 in 3-point defense. They've allowed opponents to hit 20.3% from deep, that's kind of a constant battle between stats people and fans about like how real or fake that is. But anyway, very funny. But do you know who number 2 is?
What conference?
Same conference.
Kentucky?
It is Alabama.
Oh.
Alabama is allowing 23.8% from 3 over the last 2 months of play. But it's kind of the same thing with Tennessee. You're always waiting for the regression monster around the corner. And I think they've become so wholly focused on UT's aspect of it that they've kind of lost it on Alabama's a little bit. And, to be fair, Alabama hasn't really faced many terrific shooting teams, but it's like you look at this and it's like, okay, Vandy went 6 for 33, Mizzou 3 for 28. Like, gonna happen eventually, just like it will with Tennessee. But it's amazing to see that and realize that those two teams play each other in 3 weeks. And I mean, it very well could be the game of the year.
It's going to be fun, but it's also going to be awful. Any Tennessee fan who thinks they're going to enjoy that, let me go ahead and tell you, brother, it's not going to be fun. Alabama, the way they play Tennessee, the way Nate Oates plays Rick Barnes, it's going to be a blender game where Tennessee fans are not going to have a good time. It's like the whole meme, straight up not having a good time, man. Like, even if they win, it's not going to be pretty.
It's going to be even funnier when Tennessee does win.
I hope so.
I'm pretty confident, to be honest.
Huh.
I am more confident that Tennessee.
Can we get a Julian Phillips versus Brandon Miller showdown, like just the Tennessee recruit that got away and the Tennessee recruit again?
Because it's a home situation, and Tennessee against really good teams at home, I feel pretty good about. I actually the game that scares me most the remainder of the schedule, and I could not have seen this coming a month ago, is the road Texas A&M game in mid-February. Because that is the second straight home game or road game in a row after Kentucky, which I think Tennessee's just going to do a lot better in the second round. But
yeah,
I don't know, man. A&M, that's a different team than they were a month ago. They are going to get a double bye in the SEC, and they are beelining for a 8 seed or better in the tournament.
We shall see. Will Warren, we shall see. StatsByWill.substack.com. Go subscribe today if you are not already. Follow him on Twitter at StatsByWill. Anything else you want to plug before we wrap up here tonight, man?
Yeah, so I've got a piece coming out by the time this comes out about the teams you should try and bandwagon this year in college basketball. We've ruled out all of the big money boys. We don't want any high budget teams in my little bandwagon. So I've proposed some teams like Oral Roberts. If you are not a fan of, don't Google Oral Roberts politics. Anyway, if you're not into that, there's St. Mary's, who we've talked about a lot. There's Xavier, New Mexico. And a team that I think more people should be watching that we have discussed, our Marshall Thundering Herd, who I feel stronger and stronger by the day if they get in, will win at least one tournament game.
I like that. Dan D'Antoni, man, doing the Lord's work up there.
For real.
Huntington, West Virginia, I want to say?
Yes. That could be anywhere in West Virginia. Could not point it out on a map.
No, I have no idea. But I would love to get, like, just the herd. Cool colors, cool look.
Oh, for sure. And an amazing name.
Yeah. Marshall. It's a good thundering herd. I like it. Will Warren, thank you as always, my friend. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will talk to you next week.